His extensive research has produced more than 500 research articles, book chapters, and over 50 books. He's also a past editor of the American Educational Research Journal. For the past 40 years, he has served as a consultant to schools and businesses throughout the world. And today, he's going to talk about cooperative learning. Please welcome Professor David W. Johnson.
Can everyone hear me? Can you hear me in the back row? Okay. Woody Allen once said, showing up is 80% of life. You should turn to the person next to you and say, congratulations, you showed up. Do that. Turn to the person next to you, say congratulations. Tell him yes. Now, the good news is you're here. You showed up. The bad news is you still have a few responsibilities. You have additional responsibilities than just being here. Mainly for the next 55 minutes, you have two responsibilities. One is to make sure you get something worthwhile and of interest to you out of what happens during this session. The second is to make sure everyone else in this room gets something useful and worthwhile for them out of what happens in the next 55 minutes. This means that how cooperative you are, or how cooperative the people in this room are, will determine whether you have a hard or an easy hour. So turn and take a careful look at the person on your left. Look at them. Take a look at the person on your left. All right? Now take a careful look at the person on your right. And think to yourself, how cooperative do these people appear to be? Now, I'm going to make this easy for you. I'm going to make this easy for you because we have a little test for you to conduct with the person next to you. And that is another American humorist, comedian, Will Rogers, once said, life is give and take. And a very famous American educator named Roger Johnson once said, this is a good definition of cooperation. Cooperation is give and take. So turn to the person next to you. Give them something and take something from them. Now think of this for a minute. Don't give them anything that you would miss or would you want back. But find something. A breath mint is always good. Find something. Give the person next to you something and take something from them. All right. Now, if the person next to you, said, I don't want anything from you and I'm not giving you anything, then you're going to have a very hard time over the next 50 minutes. Now, what we're going to try to do in this short period of time is to say, what is cooperative learning? And we'll do this in a couple of ways. One with a micro lesson, and then second with the conceptual definitions. Secondly, we'll say what makes cooperation work. And there are 5 basic elements that you need to understand before you leave this room an hour from now. And then the third issue is why use cooperative learning, which is the research and the theory behind it. And we will cover that very briefly. And then by that time, it'll be time to leave. And well, maybe I will do this. But I want to start out at the beginning and say there are always 3 ways a teacher can structure a lesson. A teacher can say, let's see who's best, structure a lesson competitively. A teacher can say, do this individualistically on your own, do it individualistic by yourself. Or a teacher can say, do it together in a cooperative learning group. And while all 3 are in use in most classrooms, cooperation is by far the most important and the most powerful. And for an example, well, it's the most important and the most powerful. And so in looking at classrooms, basically you want students active, not passive, talking, not silent, and connected with each other as opposed to unconnected. And all 3 of these are hallmarks of cooperative learning. You get students working together, they're very active, they're talking, explaining what they're learning, and they get connected to their classmates. Now, this results in many positive outcomes, but one of which I emphasize at the beginning is by far you get more critical thinking, more higher level reasoning, more deeper level understanding with cooperative learning than you do with competitive or individualistic learning. And there are many other outcomes, which we'll mention at the end. And if you accept the research and start teaching using cooperative learning in a classroom, the role of the teacher changes. And the teacher becomes a designer of educational experiences rather than a giver of information. So instead of standing up in front and lecturing, giving information, you design a learning experience for your students and have them work in small groups while you go around from group to group monitoring what they're doing and giving help and assistance where it's needed. Now, I also want to say at the beginning that everything you hear today was developed with my brother Roger and I. And just in case you're ever in Minnesota, here's a picture of Roger and I, so you can recognize him when you see him. And if he were here, he would say, he is the good-looking one on your right. And but we are brothers. We're a year and a half apart in age. We grew up basically on a farm in Indiana, the middle part of the United States. And we became an expert not only on cooperation, but on conflict, because we had a very intense sibling rivalry. And so we fought for years and years and years, decades, over one basic issue. And that is, does older mean superior? Or are we all equal? And Roger, as the older brother, kept saying no. He said the future of the world and the survival of the human species depends upon one basic principle: respect for your elders. And he's elder. And just out of curiosity, turn to the person next to you and say, which one do you believe? That you should respect your elders or that we're all equal? And ask them and see what they say. Okay. All right. Now, even today, Roger and I disagree about this. And that is, a few weeks ago, we're walking along a beach, planning a workshop. And Roger tripped over something in the sand. And he reached down to see what he had tripped over, and he pulls it out. And lo and behold, it's an old oil lamp from the Middle East. And he starts wiping the sand off this oil lamp to get a better look at it. And suddenly, poof, a genie appears. And the genie said, "You have liberated me from the lamp," it said. Therefore I will give you 3 wishes, anything your heart desires. But there is one catch. Anything you wish for, your brother David gets double. And Roger thinks to himself, this doesn't sound right. But he said, I've always wanted a red Ferrari. And the genie says, done. And poof, a red Ferrari for Roger. Poof, poof, 2 red Ferraris for me. And Roger looks at this and thinks, and he said, I've always wanted $1 million. Genie says, done. And poof, $1 million for Roger. Poof, poof, $2 million for me. And Roger thinks for this a minute and said, he said, I've always wanted to donate a kidney to science. And that's a more recent picture of Roger and I. But all right. Now, of course, if we're going to talk about cooperative learning, you need a cooperative group. And this needs to be a very quick transition. But I'm going to ask everyone to form groups of 3. Find 2 people you do not know who are different from you. And that is, if you're in your 30s, find somebody's in their 50s. If you're blonde, find a brunette. If you're female, find a male. But get 2 people who are different from you and sit down in a row beside each other. Sit down in a row beside each other. Okay. Does everyone have a group of 3? Does everyone have a group of 3? And it was too much to ask you to change chairs. But as long as you're organized in 3s. Are you a threesome? You're a threesome? Okay. You're part of them?
Yes.
You're going to have a foursome. And, all right. Next, turn to the other 2 people in your group and find out 3 things. Say, what is your name? Make sure you know their name. Say, what is your professional role? What do you do where? And such as I'm a professor of social psychology at the University of Minnesota. That's what I would say. But find out their professional role. 3, say, what's one of your favorite places in the world? And make sure it's a geographic place. They can't just say bed or garden. Make sure it's a geographic place. Okay, you only have about 2 minutes for this. You have to be quick. Turn into your group and say, who are you? What do you do? What's your favorite place? Okay, if you can hear me, raise your hand. If you can hear me, raise your hand. And I just want to sample 1 or 2 triads. And so what is one of the favorite places in your triad?
One of the favorites.
One of them.
Berlin. Berlin. Germany.
Berlin. Okay, Berlin. What's one of the favorite places from your triad?
Barcelona.
Barcelona. Both of these are good choices. All right. One more. The lady with the red sweater around her neck. Sitting down on the floor. What? Paris. All right. Okay. Geez, nobody said Minneapolis. Just because it gets 30 degrees below zero in the winter doesn't mean Minneapolis can't be a favorite place. But, all right. I'm going to skip over this because of time. But if you want to encourage thinking, and especially critical thinking, higher level reasoning, creativity in your classrooms, you really need to switch from the old paradigm of teaching to the new paradigm of teaching. And I think you've heard a lot about this during your careers, so I won't bother to go into it now. But instead, we're going to move to the micro lesson. And that is in your packet that hopefully at least one member of your group will have. In your packet, the last page should look like this. So find this page in your packet. When you find it, put it face down so you can't see it. then make sure everyone in your group has found it and they are putting it face down in their group so they can't see it. All right. Again, make sure it's face down. I want you to listen to instructions, not look at the figure. Okay. That's what it should look like. Now, this is a micro lesson to demonstrate cooperative learning. All of you sure know what cooperative learning is, but I want to make sure all of us have a clear reality reference so that when I say cooperative learning, we have the same thing in mind. And so we're going to do a short micro lesson, and your task is to find how many rectangles are in that figure. Now that's your task. And I should emphasize that any teacher in any subject area, any curriculum, any grade level, always has three choices. You could tell your students, I want you to compete to see who's best at finding rectangles. I want you to do this individualistically on your own without talking to your neighbor. Or you could say, I want you to do this cooperatively. Obviously, I'm going to say do it cooperatively, but a teacher always has their choice. Any lesson, any curriculum, any age level, the teacher always has their choice between those three. And in this case, doing it cooperatively, I want one answer from the three of you. How many rectangles are in this figure? Everyone has to agree. Everyone has to be explained to point out where each one of these rectangles is. The criterion for success is that every member of your group be able to find all the rectangles. And I will randomly select one member of your group to explain where they are. So make sure that everyone can find them. I expect everyone to make suggestions, to ask questions, to participate actively. And this is intergroup cooperation, not intergroup competition. So if you have a problem, ask the group next to you. They will be glad to help. Okay. Turn to your group and say, how many rectangles? Yes, you should sit here. What? You should sit here and join the group.
He's a journalist. It's a journalist.
Make him join your group anyway. You should join the group anyway. So if you sit here, you can talk to your group. Do you have a packet? Do we have more? Do we have any more of these? Okay, so the three of you should be finding how many rectangles? Can you use the board? Okay. You need paper and pencil. That's good.
Okay, will we need this?
Draw the rectangle.
Okay, I will draw. Yes, we
and then say how many.
we found just match. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Very nice. Thank you. Thank you.
Ay, thank you so much.
Are these extra?
Yes.
Are these extra?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Can you hear me? Raise your hand. I'm going to interrupt for a minute. And that is, I'm assuming your group has a tentative answer to how many rectangles. And so, for example, how many rectangles did your group find? Green sweater. How many rectangles did your group find? I can't hear. 36. All right. And how many did your group find? 44. 54. All right. Okay. Now, I have something I want you to write down on this page. And the statement is the purpose of a cooperative group. The purpose of a cooperative group. You should write it down. The purpose of a cooperative group is to make each member a stronger individual. So to say it again, the purpose of a cooperative group is to make each member a stronger individual. And in other words, in technical terms, group to individual transfer is greater than individual to individual transfer. And so if I came in tomorrow and gave you a test on triangles that you took individually, you should do better tomorrow on that test if you learned it in a group than if you learned it by yourself, on your own. So the group is preparing the students to do it on their own tomorrow for a test or an application exercise or something else. And it should be very clear to us all at the beginning that knowing the correct answer does not make you a stronger individual. So that if you just turn to, is it Maria?
Yes.
If you turn to Maria and say, the answer is 36, write down 36. She writes down 36, hands it in. That does not make her a stronger individual. What does make her a stronger individual is to have a strategy for solving this type of problem. And so when I say go, I want everyone to stand up, turn around or turn forward, find someone from a different group, and say, what strategy did your group use to find your answer? And I want you to come up with 3 strategies. If you're lucky, they'll have one, you'll have one, they'll have another, and then you just have to think of a third. And so I want 3 strategies to find the answer. Don't worry if you have different answers. Don't worry if you have different answers. Focus on the strategies. Maria, ask one of them. Ask him. Okay. Can you hear me? Raise your hand. Okay, if you hear me, raise your hand. Now, I'm going to give you 30 seconds more to do the following. Turn into your group of three and say, what is our answer? What is our favorite strategy? And then take one of the sheets of paper, everybody sign it or initial it. And your signature means three things. When you sign, it says, I agree with this answer. So if the group says 54, you say, I agree with 54. Secondly, you say, call on me. Have me come up front. I can find all 54 of these rectangles, and I can show you where they are. And then third, it says, your signature means you have my word of honor. Everyone in the group can find these rectangles. So if you have a member of the group that can only find 14, you sign for 14. You know, and it doesn't matter if you can find more, because you're giving your word that every member of our group can find these rectangles. And okay, turn into the group, say, what's our answer? What's our strategy? Everybody sign. Okay. Can you hear me? Raise your hand. If you can hear me, raise your hand. And all right. Now, if anyone cares, the book answer for this is 36. There are 36 rectangles in this figure. But if Roger were here, Roger is a science educator. And Roger would say, as a science teacher, he said, you never pay much attention to what the book answer is. Because often groups will give you a more interesting answer than the correct answer. And so, for example, we were working years ago with a group of 7th graders, and we said, how many rectangles? They said 72. 72 rectangles. I said, well, how did you get 72? They said, 36 on this side, 36 on this side, 72. And Roger likes that answer much better than 36. And we once had a group of teachers that were saying 41, 42, 43. We said, what are you doing? And they said, well, every time 2 lines cross in here, makes an itty-bitty little rectangle, and we're counting all of those, 2. And Roger likes that. And of course, an English teacher would say 37, because the word rectangle is on it. You have to count the word rectangle. And, but So you never worry too much about the answer. Do they get the answer? What you do worry about is, do they have a strategy for finding the answer? And there are many different strategies you can use to find these answers. One is random. Count them as you see them, just in a random way. Another one is color coding, or you draw out a separate little figure for each set of rectangles. A third one is you can number each rectangle. And so you say 1 is 1, 1, 2 is 1, 1, 2, 3 is 1, 1 and 4 is 1, you know, etc. Another strategy is to letter each point. So you can say, well, A, B, F, E is 1, A, B, C, G, F, E is another, so forth. There are many different strategies. The key is, this is what matters. That in a group you should, well, let me say it a different way. If I had taught this lesson as well as Roger could, and if I had given you enough time, every one of you should have learned a strategy in your group that you probably would not have thought of working on your own. And just out of curiosity, how many people did learn a strategy from your group that you probably would not have thought of by yourself, if you'd worked by yourself? Yes, see, that's what you want from a cooperative group. And now, there's one last step to the cooperative lesson, then we're going to move on. And is group processing. And so I want you to turn into your group of 3 and say, what are 3 things we did well in working together? And make sure each member of your group gets some positive feedback about what they did to help the group find those rectangles. And if you have time, then you add what's one thing we could add to be even better tomorrow than we were today, you know, working together. But I'm only going to give you about 2 minutes for this, or 90 seconds, so you need to go quick. But turn in and say, what are 3 things we did well, and make sure everyone gets some positive feedback. Okay, you can begin. Ouch. Okay, if you can hear me, raise your hand. Now, I always like to follow group processing with group celebration. So next this is the final step, but I want you to turn in your group, give them a high five and say, we were awesome. You know, we were awesome. So, okay. Now, you may want to turn to page 5 in your packet. And it should say definitions. And the definitions that I'm going to give for cooperative learning come from social interdependence theory. And one thing the theory says, the basic premise of the theory, is that the way you as a teacher structure the learning goals of the classroom determines how students interact with each other, the interaction patterns. And those interaction patterns create the outcomes. So you structure the learning goals to create an interaction pattern among students that results in your outcomes. And of course, there are 3 ways you can structure interaction patterns. If you start at the bottom and work up, you can have students compete. And to have students compete, you set an individual goal, which is do better than your classmates. Use a norm reference or a comparative grading system, such as grading on a curve. And then you reward the winners, the A students, with an A. And what that does theoretically is creates a negative correlation among goal attainments. So I'm looking for the woman in the black right here. What is your first name? Maria. Maya? Maria. So if Maria and I are competing, this is a negative correlation among goal attainments. If Maria and I were competing, anything that helps her find those 36 rectangles hurts me. That lowers my chances of getting an A. Anything that causes me to do my homework, to come to class prepared, to focus in and do my best, that hurts Maria. That lowers her chances of getting an A. So it becomes in Maria's best interest that I not study and learn, and it's my best interest that Maria not study and learn. Now, the second alternative is individualistic. And in an individualistic lesson, again from the bottom up, the teacher sets an individual goal, which is achieve up to criteria, and then uses a criterion referenced evaluation system, and then rewards students on how their performance compares to these preset criteria for excellence. And theoretically, that creates no correlation among goal attainments. So if 2 of us are working individualistically, doesn't matter to me whether you did your homework or not. It doesn't matter to you if I'm paying attention or not. We're independent learners. Now, the third option is cooperation. And again, moving from the bottom up, in a cooperative learning lesson, you set a group goal, which is learn the material, make sure everyone in your group understands the material. Second is you use a criterion referenced evaluation system. And third is you reward students usually on not only how well they do, but on how well members of their group do also. And an example I have of this is back in the late 1970s, Roger was working with all the science teachers in Austin, Texas. And he had a physics teacher in this high school who had set up the following system. He had a cooperative group working on each physics unit. At the end of the unit, he would give each member an individual test. And then he would say, however, if everyone in your group gets 90% or better on the test, each of you will get 5 bonus points. Now, he liked this system because he thought if a parent comes in and says, doesn't this group pull my kid's score down? He'd say, no. Your child gets his or her score on the test. There's no way the group could ever lower that grade. What the group can do is raise it. The group can make the difference between a B plus and an A minus, or a C plus or a B minus. And then he did what we call spreading the umbrella. He said, what if every student in my class got 90% correct on the test? 10 bonus points per student. In other words, if your group understands the physics, go around and help the other groups until everybody in the class knows the material. And as we left him that spring, he was thinking, well, I teach 3 sections of physics in this high school. What if I said if every student in every section got 90% or better on the test? 15 bonus points. 15 bonus points. And we've always had this fantasy of students walking down the hall saying, hey, do you take physics? Do you take physics? If you do, here's how you solve problem 14. We figured this out. Take it back. Make sure everybody in your class understands how to do this problem. Now, that's a much different academic climate than you found in most high schools in the United States in the 70s, or even today. But what it signifies is in a cooperative lesson, there's a positive correlation among goal attainments. So that, what is your first name?
Roberto.
Roberto? That's right. I knew that, but I thought I better check. If Roberto and I are working cooperatively, anything that helps Roberto see those 36 rectangles helps me. Anything that causes me to do my homework, come to class prepared, that helps Roberto. It's in Roberto's best interest that I study and learn. It's in my best interest that Roberto study and learn. Now, I've run out of time. So if you turn to the next page in the packet, you'll see 5 basic elements. And what I want to say is there's far more to cooperative learning than putting students in groups. That is, in addition to putting students in groups, you have to make sure all these 5 elements are present in the lesson. That there's a sense of positive interdependence, that sink or swim together, that we're linked. And we have to be as concerned about each other's learning as we are about our own. Secondly, there's individual accountability. Everybody has to do their fair share of the work. Third is there's a promotive interaction pattern. You promote each other's success. You help, share, assist, encourage each other to learn. This takes social skills, leadership skills, decision-making skills, trust-building skills, which need to be taught to the students. And then finally, periodically, groups have to process how well are we doing, how can we do better. And it's these 5 elements that make a lesson cooperative, not just a seating arrangement. Now, now, in terms of the research, which you're going to get a 3-hour lecture in 30 seconds, so you'll have to listen well. But this is one of the oldest research traditions. This is one of the oldest research traditions in psychology or in any social science. There were studies in Europe back in the 1880s, 1890s comparing competitive, cooperative, individualistic. The first study in North America was published in 1898. These dates for Mayer and Ringelmann in Germany and France came later, but actually their work was earlier. They just published it later. And we now have over 1,200 studies from which we can figure an effect size, which is there's more research about cooperative learning than there is about lecturing, about age grouping, about starting reading at age 6, almost about any other aspect of education. And you get multiple outcomes from having students work in cooperative groups. And one, you get higher achievement. And with that, higher level reasoning, critical thinking, long-term retention, et cetera. And it's safe to say if you want students to think at a deeper level and to be more critical in their thinking, a cooperative group is a requirement to begin that. It doesn't happen in competitive situations or very often in individualistic situations. But a second set of outcomes is around the relationships among students. And so turn and take a careful look at the other two people in your group. Just turn and look at the other two people in your group. All right? Now, you worked on rectangles with them for 7 or 8 minutes. Odds are, though, the relationship will never be the same. That is, if you... That is, if you see them at a session tomorrow, you will respond differently than you would have if you would sit here listening to me lecture all alone. And so in most cases, relationships among students improve. And then finally, students, their social competencies increase, their self-esteem increases. There's a lot of variables around psychological health. So by using cooperative groups, you affect all 3 of these areas, which is a lot for your money. Well, I really have to quit. It's too bad. This is in your packet. These are some effect sizes. So, wait a second. So, I'm going to leave with one of my favorite quotes. This comes from an Italian author who said, "We are all angels with one wing. We can only fly while embracing each other." And I think that's a good... It's a good metaphor for cooperative learning. So turn to your group and say, "Thank you. Together we flew." And have a good conference.